In September 1963, following the success of the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Thor and the Incredible Hulk, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created the X-Men. This team, initially consisting of 5 teenage superheroes and their mentor Professor Charles Xavier, would be introduced as mutants, people born with a unique genetic trait which granted them extraordinary abilities. Even though the X-Men didn't initially gain immense traction, with the ensemble series being cancelled in 1970, they took over the superhero landscape in 1975, with Len Wein and Dave Cockrum's giant-size X-Men special and Chris Claremont's legendary run that followed. Under Claremont, the X-Men evolved into the pinnacle of Marvel storytelling, transforming previously overlooked heroes into some of the company's biggest and most beloved characters. Following Claremont's departure in October 1992, the X-Men would only continue to grow, with their now legendary animated series premiering that same month and a live-action film that ushered in the modern age of superhero blockbusters being released in 2000. To say that the X-Men are a massively significant part of Marvel's history would be a huge understatement. However, over the past 15 years, longtime fans have grown frustrated with Marvel's treatment of their favourite mutant heroes. Despite the X-Men being one of Marvel's crown jewels, throughout the 1980s, 90s and early 2000s, the team's status had begun to wane throughout the 2010s, due to an ongoing feud between Disney and 20th Century Fox. This all changed though in 2019, when writer Jonathan Hickman took over the entire X line and completely reimagined it. Fresh off the success of his 2015 event Secret Wars, Hickman revolutionised the X-Men universe, not only cancelling every ongoing series, but drastically changing their status quo and place within Marvel's ever-expanding world. Hickman's arrival saw the launch of 2 brand new series, House of X and Powers of 10, both written by him with art by Pepe Larraz, R.B. Silver and Marty Gracia. These comics would change everything fans knew about the X-Men, restoring the team to their rightful place at Marvel's apex and setting the stage for an exciting new era of prosperity. Throughout just 12 issues, House of X and its sister series became one of the most powerful and important X-Men stories of all time, and provided the new beginning that the series desperately needed in order to guarantee its future. So in this video, I want to explain the history of how Jonathan Hickman's time on X-Men came to be, and the real-world story behind both House of X and Powers of 10. Discuss how the writer drastically altered the status quo of Marvel's Merry Mutants, and how this new beginning for the X-Men not only saved the team from obscurity, but managed to set the stage for their greatest triumph. Before we continue though, just a quick reminder to leave a like on this video if you enjoy it, and subscribe to Owen Likes Comics so you don't miss out on any future videos. In order to understand exactly how Jonathan Hickman saved the X-Men, I think it's first important to overview the state of X-Men comics in the years leading up to this relaunch, as well as the factors that made such a stark and drastic reimagining of the team's status quo so necessary. Although the X-Men have been one of Marvel's biggest and most popular properties throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, their role within the Marvel universe began to change soon after. You see, after the conclusion of Marvel's House of M crossover in November 2005, a new arc began in the X-Men series known as Decimation, which revealed that the Scarlet Witch had used her reality warping powers to reduce the world's mutant population down to merely a few hundred. This revelation marked a downward trend for Charles Xavier and his proteges. In 2007, the X-Men would be disbanded and their longtime home destroyed during the Messiah Complex story arc. This eventually led to a civil war between former X-Men members, with Cyclops and Wolverine leading different factions into battle in the 2011 miniseries Schism. This story wouldn't conclude with the X-Men coming back together though, and instead the divide between the mutant heroes would only be deepened, culminating in the 2012 event Avengers vs X-Men. Here, Cyclops' team battle with the Avengers over the fate of Hope Summers, the first new mutant born since Decimation, who Scott believes can revive their race by bonding with the Phoenix Force. Believing Scott's plan to endanger both Hope and the entire world, the Avengers, Wolverine and Charles Xavier all devise a plan to stop him. This story wouldn't just highlight the extent to which the X-Men's classic status quo had been broken over the past several years, but would also turn Cyclops into a true villain, as he aligns with Magneto and perhaps most shockingly, kills Charles Xavier. The Professor's death would prove incredibly emblematic of Marvel's attitudes towards the X-Men during this period, as the man whose dream of utopian society between humans and mutants was now dead and remained so until 2018. In Xavier's absence, the X-Men would only slide further down the pecking order of the Marvel Universe, with Brian Michael Bendis attempting to revitalise the series by creating a brand new team comprised of the original 5 members, brought forward in time to the present day, while Cyclops and Wolverine's disparate factions continue to fight over the legacy of Professor X. Following the events of 2015 Secret Wars and Marvel's soft relaunch, the company would build to a conflict between the X-Men and the Inhumans, with the reveal that the Terrigen Mist was lethal to those carrying the mutant gene. This status quo would run throughout X-Men comics for the next several years. However, by this time, longtime fans had grown frustrated with Marvel's treatment of their favourite characters. To many, the X-Men had seemingly gone from being one of the company's crown jewels to a complete afterthought, too historically significant to outright cancel, but no longer deemed important enough to place significant emphasis on. This period of X-Men comics coincided with Marvel's attempts to launch their shared cinematic universe, and with the X-Men film rights being owned by 20th Century Fox, it seemed like the team were being intentionally de-emphasized in order to promote other characters that Marvel could develop into live-action films. With the company's priorities seemingly shifting and the X-Men's classic status quo in ruins, it appeared that the likes of Wolverine, Cyclops and co. had firmly lost their place at Marvel's summit and would instead reside in a purgatory of indifference. But to discuss the fate of the X-Men in this period further, and explain why such a drastic reimagining of the team was required by 2019, I sat down with Dave Busing, the founder and editor-in-chief of comicbookherald.com. Dave is a lifelong X-Men fan and someone who was following the series quite closely in the years leading up to Jonathan Hickman's arrival, and I asked him to explain the feelings surrounding the X line by the late 2010s and the factors that made House of X so necessary.
From at least 2016 until the House of X and Powers of 10 relaunch, the franchise was very muddled. It had lost importance in the Marvel Universe. The core of what X-Men were was really hard to find. There were these desperate attempts at recapturing nostalgia of the early 90s and catering to a fan base that had not moved on in 30 years. And whether you liked those runs or not, the point was the franchise didn't have a direction. It didn't have a feel of like, this is new and exciting, and this is what X-Men can be for the 2020s. I think the biggest problem narratively was after House of M, all of mutantdom is reduced to 198 mutants, right? And really from that point until House and Powers, they just can't catch a break. And nothing good ever happens, right? So that's 15 years basically of, wandering through the wilderness and never coming out of it to something new. I think the Decimation era is actually full of pretty interesting comics, right? You get Messiah Complex in there, you get Second Coming, you get developments like Hope Summers, you get a lot of stuff in there. You have great writers during that time. Then when you hit Marvel Now, again, we still have good comics, right? You have Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force. You have Jason Aaron on Wolverine and the X-Men, a series I really enjoy. Cullen Bunn doing Magneto was a really good solo character series. So this idea that there are no X-Men comics worth reading during this time period, it doesn't really take hold, I think, until after Secret Wars. And from there until House and Powers, X-Men comics are just like, what? What even are they? All the core stuff, X-Men Blue, X-Men Gold, Extraordinary X-Men, Astonishing X-Men. You get good creators attached to these projects. Jeff Lemire, who doesn't like a Jeff Lemire comic? X-Men fans, because it just wasn't allowed to it didn't have anything. It just, there's no meat, there's no substance. And that's how the core of that universe fell. One way you can tell if Marvel is editorially pushing or supporting a book, aside from promotion, is what are their core events? of the time period, right? And who is the focus and who are they pushing, right? So you get like in 2016, and this is a bad stretch for Marvel events post Secret Wars. We have the best, in my opinion, the best comic book event of all time is Secret Wars 2015. Then you have what? You have Civil War II. Miles is focused. Carol Danvers is focused. Iron Man is focused. No X-Men component. Then you have Secret Empire, which is a Captain America focused event. Okay, and very Avengers based. The X-Men stuff in that is super weird. We don't have to get into it. And basically, as you go through, like the X-Men events from the time period are all confined to their line, and they are about killing or destroying or further decimating the mutant population. There was not a push for X-Men to succeed. That does seem to have been editorially mandated. I was always baffled by that, frankly. In a lot of ways, the idea that the Inhumans could replace the mutants, just I think for Marvel fans is like, well, no, that'll never happen. Why would you want it to? But it was also just weird to me that like, well, why don't you just make the Inhumans cool and focus on them, but like also sell your X-Men comics? Like, why not have your cake and eat it too? I never.
Yeah, you can have both. The Inhumans and the X-Men have managed to coexist since the 60s. Why now does it have to be either or?
But yeah, I mean, it definitely, the death of Charles, the fracturing of the X-Men, because you have a literal schism in the franchise at that point. It just, again, it's that thing of decimation. There aren't as many mutants. We got the mutants back, AVX, great. Oh, they're fractured, they're broken, and they have no aim. And it's just a constant splitting and decentering of what the franchise could be, what the vision should be.
Running concurrently with this dark period of the X-Men's history was Jonathan Hickman's rise to prominence within Marvel Comics. Today recognised as one of the best writers in the industry, Hickman began his career in 2006, writing and drawing two creator-owned books, Pax Romana and The Nightly News, both published by Image Comics. Both of these series received much critical acclaim, and as such, Hickman began working for Marvel in 2009, first working on Secret Warriors before beginning a celebrated 3-year run on the Fantastic Four. Through his time writing Marvel's First Family, Hickman became a significant name within the comics industry, with his run not only reminding fans of just what made these characters so great, but pushing the Four into unexpected directions, with his run most notably killing off the Human Torch and creating the Future Foundation. Following Hickman's exit from the series in late 2012, he was announced as the new writer of Avengers. Here, the writer began another multi-year saga that would result in many beloved storylines, including Infinity, Time Runs Out, and perhaps most notably, Secret Wars. Developed as a reimagining of the classic 1984 miniseries, Hickman and artist Asad Ribić's Secret Wars was the culmination of the writer's 6-year tenure at Marvel, serving as not only one of the greatest event books ever told, but a fitting conclusion to his popular Avengers run and a heartfelt epilogue to his time on the Fantastic Four. In the aftermath of Secret Wars, Hickman stepped away from Marvel to focus on many other creator-owned projects. However, despite this, the writer maintained a long-running desire to one day work on the X-Men, and saw an opportunity to revive the ensemble's fortunes with a drastic reinvention of the mythos. The chance to work on X-Men eventually arrived in late 2017, when following Brian Michael Bendis' exit to DC Comics, Marvel approached Hickman about returning to the company. This coincided with Disney announcing the purchase of 20th Century Fox that December, with Marvel Comics editorial believing it to be the opportune time to relaunch their X-Men books with a renewed focus. In a 2019 interview with AIPT Comics, Hickman explained the circumstances surrounding his return to Marvel, and how the X-Men was decided as his next long-term project. He states,
"I'd been gone a couple of years and I was sitting around, and then Dan Buckley called me and he wanted me to come back, and one of the things that we talked about was how do we make X-Men the giant X-Men that it was most of my life. And so I came up with what I thought was wrong or tired or needed changing. And you know, in the same way that Brian repositioned the Avengers during Disassembled and all that kind of stuff, what is that version of the X stuff? And we came up with this. What needed changing? A lot. What did we change? A whole lot. But it feels like the X-Men is the important thing. It feels like it was the book that we read a long time ago, but it's not. It's this new thing. And I think that's the key, right? That's how we kind of unlocked it."
After signing a new contract with Marvel and expressing his desire to take over the mutant heroes, Hickman put together a list of everything he believed was wrong with the current era of X-Men books, and what he thought he could do to fix it. After successfully pitching his idea to the company's editorial team, Hickman put together a team of talented artists to help bring his ambitious pitch to life, recruiting pencilers Pepe Larraz and R.B. Silver, as well as colorist Marty Gracia. His arrival to the X-Men series would be formally announced in March of 2019, with fans eagerly anticipating what the legendary writer would do to reinvigorate this once great corner of the Marvel Universe. News broke soon after that all current X-Men books would end, and in their place would come two brand new titles, House of X and Powers of 10, which would serve as the prologue for Hickman's grand, multi-year plan for the series. Anticipation reached a fever pitch in July of 2019, when the first installment of this brand new era finally hit shelves. And just from the comic's now iconic cover, readers quickly realised that things would never be the same again, and that while they had slept, the world of the X-Men had truly changed. House of X issue 1 opens with an unexpected sight, as we see a sinister looking figure wearing a black jumpsuit and a large metal helmet standing over several people emerging from pods. As the unidentified individuals crawl from their pods, we discover that they resemble several longtime members of the X-Men, and that this mysterious figure above them is none other than Charles Xavier. This introduction establishes the new world that the X-Men now inhabit. 6 months after the previous comic storylines, we learn that Xavier has established a new settlement on the mutant island of Krakoa, as we're treated to a brief tour of the island as we see Jean Grey lead a group of children through a portal into it. Meanwhile, we learn that Magneto and the Brotherhood are also working with Xavier on this new endeavour, as Eric meets with several ambassadors from the United Nations, while Sabretooth and Mystique orchestrate a break-in at a damage control facility. Sabretooth is apprehended by the Fantastic Four, allowing Mystique to escape and return to Krakoa before Cyclops confronts the heroes and explains that all mutants now have global amnesty from human law. The uneasy feeling between Cyclops and the Fantastic Four is reflected in Magneto's meeting with the UN ambassadors, where we discover that Professor X has created several drugs for various human health concerns using the native flowers of Krakoa, and offers them to the world in exchange for humanity recognizing their new nation. As the various facets of mutantkind work together to establish their new home, it's quickly revealed that a looming threat to their existence is coming. In the very first issue of House of X, we're introduced to AUKUS, a coalition of several different organisations from across the Marvel Universe, who are working together to create a last defence for humanity against the rising mutant threat. This defense is revealed to be a mother mold, an AI machine capable of creating master molds and sentinels designed to exterminate the mutant race. Xavier and Magneto learn about AUKUS's plans for Mystique, with the stolen data revealing their base of operations and when their first mother mold is expected to come online. Concerned by this threat, Charles tells Cyclops to assemble a team of X-Men to attack the facility, though he warns his longtime ally that this mission may be one that they don't return from. Soon after, Cyclops and his team, consisting of Jean Grey, Wolverine and Nightcrawler, infiltrate the AUKUS facility, where they discover that the Mother Mold has gone online earlier than expected. As the android immediately becomes self-aware, vowing to eradicate both humans and mutants, the X-Men realise they're now on a suicide mission, with each hero ultimately giving their life to destroy the Mother Mold. Xavier watches in horror as all of his trusted students die, feeling the pain of every casualty and loss the mutant race has experienced throughout their existence. The pain becomes too much to bear, and a single tear falls down Xavier's face, as he simply mutters, "No more." This heartbreak paves the way for the next stage of Xavier's master plan, as we discover that with the help of Mr. Sinister and a group of mutants known as the Five, he's devised a way to bring back any deceased mutants, regrowing their bodies using Sinister's DNA samples and using his new version of Cerebro to restore their memories. He tries this experimental procedure to revive the fallen X-Men, with the comic returning us to the very first page of Cyclops and co emerging from the pods. As the heroes wake up, Scott asks the Professor if their mission was successful, and if the Mother Mold was destroyed, to which Xavier tells him that it was. As the UN vote to officially recognise Krakoa as a nation-state, thanks to the help of Emma Frost, Storm leads a ceremony back on the island to unveil the revived heroes. These celebrations are interrupted though by the sudden arrival of numerous X-Men villains, most notably Apocalypse. However, in another shocking twist, the villains actually come in peace, with Apocalypse accepting Xavier's offer of amnesty and pledging to make the island his new home. The following day, the Quiet Council convenes for the first time, the new government of Krakoa, which represents each facet of the mutant world. The Council's first order of business is to establish the laws that will govern their new society, with the principles they outline being to make more mutants, to kill no human, and to respect the sacred land. With these laws now in place and Krakoa being officially recognised by the world, a party erupts throughout the island soon after, where we see former enemies become friends and Marvel's mutant population appearing like a truly united front for the very first time. As we watch our heroes toast their new beginnings, Xavier and Magneto stand alone, declaring that while they have created their home, it is now time to defend and fight for it. Eric asks Charles if he is prepared to battle the entire world in order to save his people and their future on Krakoa, to which Xavier sternly replies, "Let them try." While House of X established the present-day status quo for the X-Men, these 6 issues don't tell the entire story of Hickman's ambitious plans for mutantkind. Instead, in the pages of the comic sister series Powers of 10, we not only learn additional context on the series' main plotlines, but a shocking revelation that shakes the entire X-Men world to its core. This revelation revolves around Moira McTaggart, a long-time supporting character in X-Men comics and a former lover of Charles Xavier. Though previously depicted as a human ally, Hickman reimagines Moira to secretly be a mutant, and quite possibly the most powerful and significant one in the entire Marvel universe. Throughout Powers of 10, it's revealed that Moira actually has the power of reincarnation, living her life over and over again while retaining the full memories of her previous lives. While House of X chronicles Xavier and Magneto's attempts to build a mutant safe haven, Powers details how the revelation of Moira's abilities has led to this dramatic change in the X-Men's world, as well as the dark future that they are all fighting against. Moira's first life was that of a regular person. She grows up, attends university, falls in love and has 3 children. Moira passes away at age 74, having lived a full and prosperous life with her family. Then something unexpected happened. Moira wakes up from her deathbed, now a baby once again in utero. Not only is she conscious though, she remembers all of her previous life, and as such, she grows up to be an incredibly gifted child and enrolls at the University of Oxford at age 16. In Moira's adulthood, she begins to research just how she came back to life, before discovering the work of Charles Xavier and his admission of being a mutant. Moira attempts to travel to the United States, however her plane crashes above the Atlantic Ocean and her second life concludes. Moira's third life sees her meet Xavier during his time studying at Oxford. However, her experience with the future professor is less than pleasant, and she eventually grows to resent her mutant abilities. Moira dedicates her life to creating a cure for the mutant gene. Her efforts to create a cure though cause her to be confronted by the Brotherhood, who warn Moira that once a cure exists, anti-mutant organisations will use it to exterminate their species. It's also here that Destiny warns Moira that she has a finite amount of lives, and the one she has remaining should be spent furthering the mutant cause, before Pyro burns her alive and the universe resets again. Shaken by her experiences, Moira spends her next 2 lives working alongside Xavier, first helping him form the X-Men and his school for gifted youngsters, and then, after the school was destroyed by Sentinels, establishing a mutant commune called Faraway. Both of these endeavours prove unsuccessful though, and realising the danger that machines face, Moira's 6th life sees her live 1,000 years into the future, where humanity has merged with machines and eradicated the majority of mutants. In this future society, a new species of post-humans seek ascension into the techno-organic race, the Phalanx, with Moira being kept alive by an individual called the Librarian, who seeks to prevent her from resetting the universe until the ascension is complete. Alongside Wolverine, Moira lives to witness this process begin, learning that humans will render evolution obsolete and create their own successors using tech who will eradicate mutantkind. Just before the ascension begins, Wolverine kills Moira, allowing her to take this information back to the present day and start again. Believing that her purpose is now to prevent the rise of machines, Moira spends her 7th life hunting down each member of the Trask family, believing that doing so will prevent the Sentinels' creation. This again fails, as the Sentinels still materialise even without their original creator. As such, in her next lives, Moira wages war on all of humanity, first aligning with Magneto in a failed coup, and then awakening Apocalypse. Her 9th life proves to be the most successful, as Apocalypse and his horsemen defeat the world's superheroes and establish a mutant capital on Krakoa. However, this doesn't result in peace, as the underground human resistance turns to machinery and tech to fight Apocalypse, creating the ultimate AI intelligence, Nimrod. 100 years into this future, Nimrod's army defeats the mutants, with help from Mr. Sinister, whom Moira had tasked with creating chimeras using his database of mutant DNA before betraying her. In a final attempt to save their people, Apocalypse leads the X-Men into Nimrod's fortress to steal information on the android's creation, as well as the true nature of Sinister's plans, with Wolverine retrieving the data and bringing it to Moira. Now realising where each of her prior attempts had failed, and the true threat the machines pose to the mutant race, Moira devises one final plan as Wolverine reluctantly kills her, and we reset one last time. Moira's 10th life takes place in the current Marvel universe, where we see many of the X-Men's seminal moments take place as we know them. But running underneath these adventures is a new trajectory for the life of Xavier and Magneto. After first meeting Charles and allowing him to read her mind, Xavier realises his dream of peace is no longer attainable, and the only way to save mutants is through power and resistance. With this, the two travel to recruit Magneto, where they outline a plan to create a mutant nation to combat the eventual rise of Nimrod. However, these plans at first failed to materialise, as the former friends have differing beliefs on how this can be achieved. But following Xavier's death at the hands of Cyclops and Resurrection, his worldview begins to noticeably change, and in the 6 months between his return and House of X, he and Magneto set in motion their plans for Krakoa, with Charles instructing Cypher to bond with the sentient island, buying up the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, and working with Sinister to gain access to his DNA database. While the events of House of X transpire, Moira instructs Charles and Eric from the shadows, existing in a hidden part of Krakoa with no other mutants aware of her existence. After the UN recognises the Krakoan nation, the pair meet with Moira in secret, where she urges them to never divulge her existence or the tragic secret that their entire plan is built on. Whatever happens, mutants always lose. As Magneto and the Professor observe the celebrations across the island, Moira recalls her conversation with Charles at the beginning of this life, stating that for all of the different lives she has lived, the sole constant was Charles and his unwavering belief in the good of both humanity and mutants. She fears that by changing Xavier's fate and enlisting him in her mission, she may have broken the once good-natured Professor for good, as well as everything the X-Men once stood for. But as Krakoa celebrates, she assures herself that this is a small price to pay to guarantee the future of the entire mutant world. Throughout its 12-issue run, House of X managed to recapture interest in the X-Men series to an extent unseen for many years. Thanks to the unbridled vision and creativity of Jonathan Hickman and the brilliance of his collaborators, the X-Men once again became a focal point of the Marvel Universe and one of the most talked about things in the entire superhero landscape. Following the release of Powers of 10 issue 6 in October 2019, the next phase in this master plan began, with Hickman relaunching the entire X line under the new initiative Dawn of X. With 10 new books being released each month, this initiative accelerated the X-Men's new status quo on Krakoa, and also saw a more collaborative approach to storytelling begin, with the likes of Jerry Duggan, Benjamin Percy, and Leah Williams all playing major roles in shaping this new era. The broader X-Men story that Hickman first imagined morphed into a more collective process throughout Dawn of X, with these books all leading into two notable crossovers, X of Swords and the Hellfire Gala, which saw the X-Men defend Krakoa from an invading threat, and the opening of Krakoa to the outside world for the first time. After these stories concluded, Hickman and co announced the next phase of the X-Men saga, with Reign of X. However, in August 2021, Hickman revealed that he was set to depart the series, with his swan song being the 4-part story arc Inferno. Inferno serves as a fitting end to the tale that the writer began with House of X, drastically altering the new status quo of the X-Men and changing the nature of their mission forever. While it was bittersweet for Hickman to exit the series only 2 years after he took over, Inferno was also a new beginning for the series, as many other writers who had worked alongside Hickman began to play a more notable role in shaping the future direction of the X-Men. When speaking with Dave from Comic Book Herald about House of X, I asked him what he thought the legacy of this series was, now that we're close to 4 years since its inception, and how successful he thought it was at breathing new life into the X-Men and turning the team's fortunes around. He stated that,
I absolutely loved the series. I think House and Powers is truly fantastic. What I was hungriest for were 2 things. One that I knew was vision and direction for the X-Men. And this comes out with that in spades, right? It's like, this is going to be the Krakoa era. We are on Krakoa, all mutants belong here, we have conquered death, we have resurrection protocols now, mutantkind can live forever. The second thing that I was hungry for that I didn't know I needed was, also, this is going to be heavy science fiction. It is going to extend 100 years in the future, no, 1,000 years in the future, and it is going to drop concepts on you like galactic intelligences and all of these things that I still don't fully understand, but data pages full of master's degree, doctorate degree textbooks, right, on how this stuff should work. That was so thrilling and appetizing, and it just gave the sense that this could go forever. It gave the sense that we are in for an instant classic that is going to whet our X appetites for years to come. You could just feel that, and you could feel the excitement of X-Men fans who'd been craving that. Because like I said, you get these little bites and morsels here and there, but there was no substantive, all of X-Men has the potential to be great kind of feeling until this launched. I mean, one of the absolute hardest things you can do in Big 2 comics these days is relaunch a franchise without a hard reboot. It is so flippin' hard to pull off and to make it a jumping on point. And is House of X and Powers better if you know history of X-Men comics? Yes, definitely. Is it pretty accessible and able to jump in if you haven't been keeping up? Yeah, it is. If you're a new reader, you're not gonna find better jumping on points, at this point in Marvel, again, without an Ultimate Universe style reboot. So I think the fact that it was able to pull that off and tell what is in and of itself a very satisfying 12-issue story, incredible work. I love this book.
In my opinion, House of X and Powers of 10 are not only some of the best comics I've read in some time, but a brilliant reimagining of the X-Men mythos, changing their status quo in bold new ways while still maintaining the central themes that have driven their stories since the 1960s. While Hickman's X-Men are a far more aggressive and militant group, best encapsulated by Charles Xavier's stoic demeanour and more hostile worldview, this isn't without justification. After suffering decades of hardship, both in universe and editorially, this new incarnation return with a vengeance, carving out their place in the Marvel Universe with no apologies or considerations for what the rest of the world might think. As someone who grew up on the X-Men both in terms of comics and the animated shows of the 1990s and early 2000s, House of X very much rekindled my love for the series. Before Hickman's arrival, I'd barely kept up with X-Men comics for several years, as it felt like the best days for this once beloved ensemble had come and gone. Particularly in the early to mid 2010s, the X-Men felt so far away from what they once were that it seemed almost impossible that Marvel could turn them around. Yet, in just 12 issues, Jonathan Hickman rejuvenated the X-Men and not only made me care about them all over again, but made them feel like the most important thing going on in all of Marvel. I understand that this new take on the team might not be for everyone, as Hickman certainly pushes the X-Men's mythos to its breaking point, forcing it to adapt and evolve for a new generation. However, even still, I think House of X is tremendously significant in bringing interest back to the X-Men comics, and giving the group one last chance to write and define their future. Whether it be through the mystery of Krakoa, this new version of Professor X, or the unexpected twist of Moira McTaggart, House and Powers managed to to not only tell a great singular story, but create a path that future writers and artists would travel down for many years to come. Although the old dream of the X-Men may be dead, in its ashes came a brand new world. To me, more so than anything else, this series gave the X-Men a second chance to return to the mountaintop of the superhero world, and tell a new chapter in the story that they had previously had taken away from them. The legacy of House of X is still felt in the framework of every page of a modern X-Men comic today, with the X-Men still today remaining an unequivocal cornerstone of the Marvel Universe in a way they hadn't been for so long. And that's why, in my opinion, Jonathan Hickman redefined, modernised, and most importantly, saved the X-Men. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to leave a like on this video and leave a comment down below as well. Let me know your thoughts on everything we talked about in today's video. I can't wait to hear what you have to say as always. If you're new to Owen Likes Comics, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notify bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you enjoyed this and you want some more, there should be some other videos on screen right now that you might also enjoy. If you want to help support the channel and help me make more videos, you can do so over at patreon.com/OwenLikesComics. Or if you just want some more of me, you can follow me on Twitter just at Owen Likes Comics. But that's all for this video though. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you next time. But until then, take care and keep reading.